Penn State already has their college football playoff experience off to a good start, and now they are looking to continue that with a win over the Boise State Broncos. Today, we take a look at how they do that, the players that you need to watch, and how they shut down this Boise State team. Penn State is a team that I think a lot of people expected to win their first round matchup against SMU. Again, one thing that we really saw was the electric atmospheres. I think that Penn State's stadium, Beaver Stadium, was rocking. The atmosphere was incredible. The fans were really into it, and their team put together a really fun game. And you saw a lot of different things. You saw defensive touchdowns. You saw the offense do some really exciting things, and that builds momentum going into this game against the number 3 seeded Boise State Broncos. This is a team that is playing with a lot of confidence, and Penn State is looking to end that Cinderella run that Boise State's been on. And this is a team that is very capable of doing that, especially with what you saw against SMU. SMU is a team that had a lot of potential in terms of explosive plays, but Penn State largely shut them down. And especially early, the turnovers were a big thing. That helped them a ton, and that's how we got to this point. The defense did its job. The offense did enough to essentially win the line of scrimmage and get points on the scoreboard when they needed them, and that was a thing that you needed from this offense, you needed from the defense, you needed a complete effort because SMU was capable of keeping that game close, and if not for the turnovers, maybe that's a different game, but I think Penn State did a really good job of pretty much making that game over really early in that ball game, and that's something that you're going to want to do against Boise State. Boise State is that team that the underdogs want to keep this game interesting for as long as possible. The longer they go into this game without being out of it, the more confidence they get, the more excited they get, their fan base is into it, and Penn State is going to want to make sure that does not happen. So how do they do that? The keys to the game for Penn State, you have to stop Ashton Jeanty. That is the most obvious thing here. Ashton Jeanty is one of the best running backs in college football that we've seen in a long time. He is the best running back in college football this year and was a Heisman finalist. You know, he was very close to winning the Heisman, and that is the player you have to stop. Boise State's offense largely runs through Ashton Jeanty. You look at what he's done this year, over 2,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, and I guess the one thing I would say is that this Penn State team has a lot of similarities with Boise State. They do a lot of things very similar. It's just that they don't rely on one player in the rushing attack. Because when you compare these two teams, the Penn State team is essentially just, I would say, a more talented version of Boise State. Because when you look at the offense, Penn State wants to run the football. They have a tight end who is very involved in the offense. You have a quarterback that is playing with a lot of confidence as well, but also at times I think there's some concerns about Drew Aller and what he can do. So there's something like that makes them similar to Boise State. Boise State, kind of the same thing. Maddox Madsen, you're not really sure what you're going to get. He's playing with a ton of confidence through 22 touchdowns this year, and he is someone that could be a big X factor for them. They obviously run everything through Ashton Jeanty. Their tight ends are very involved. So that offense is very similar to what Penn State runs on offense. The defense, again, Boise State defense plays with their hair on fire. They are running to the football. They are trying to be disruptive. They are trying to make big plays. And that is something that Penn State wants to do. And you saw that against SMU. They were running the football. They were creating turnovers. And again, I'm not saying they're the exact same, but when you look at the shell of these two teams, they're eerily similar. It's just the level of talent is different and how they go about their business. You know, the rushing attack for Penn State is Singleton and Allen. You have Ashton Jeanty for Boise State. The quarterbacks, again, there's a lot of similarities between these two teams. So you already have the formula on how do you beat Boise State, because it's almost like they have to look at it, how do we beat ourselves? What would we do if we wanted to stop our offense? How do we create unique ways to beat our defense? Those are things that I think Penn State is going to want to do in order to win this football game. One of those ways is getting Drew Aller comfortable. We talked about him. You know, he didn't have the best game against SMU, but is also very cold. You didn't really need him to do a ton because of how the game played out. Again, that game was a blowout early, and it was a game that it felt the Penn State had a firm grip on, and that's why you see the stat line of 13 to 22 for 137 yards. I think that eventually, if it's this game, you'd want to see him a little bit more involved. There is a chance that Penn State can use a similar stat line from him because they could potentially dominate this game. Penn State is the more talented team. I think when you're looking at it from the Penn State perspective, there should be a ton of confidence on this side. They are the favorite for a reason. There's a reason why they're a 10-point favorite right now, and you've seen what they've done against inferior competition. You know that they have the ability to win this game, and they're the more talented team. It's just a matter of, can they do exactly what they did at SMU to Boise State? One way to do that is limit your turnovers and obviously also create turnovers. Boise State is +8 in turnover margin. They are second in the country in turning the ball over, getting the ball back to their offense. And that is a big key for Penn State. Now, Penn State is very good at taking care of the football. I'm not saying that they're going to worry about that, but Boise State is a team that thrives on taking away the football, and they don't need a ton of turnovers to swing the momentum in their favor. That is something that'll be really interesting to watch if you're a Penn State fan. How do you take care of the football? Drew Aller obviously plays a huge role in that. The running backs play a huge role. But I'm also very excited to see how they manage to really take it to Boise State. I think that they have the ability to be physical, and you've seen some really exciting things from this team as the season's progressed. You saw it in the first round. And I think it was a good thing for Penn State. We've debated all year of, is it good to have a first round bye? Is it good to play in that first round? And I think for Penn State, it was good to get that first round win and get them some excitement going into the second round, because you have a team in Boise State that it comes in with a lot of confidence. They haven't played for a couple weeks now. I'm not saying they're going to be rusty, but you're going to have some time to get acclimated, and Boise State might take a little extra time because they haven't played for a little while. Maybe that helps you, but one thing I do know is that this Penn State team is playing with a ton of confidence, and that's going to help them a ton in this game. And the players that are going to do that, we'll talk about here. We've kind of discussed them already. Dominic DeLuca is the player I'm going to spotlight because of his performance against SMU. You look at the 2 interceptions, 1 return for a touchdown. Penn State had 2 returns for touchdown on interceptions. You had 21 points off turnovers. That was the biggest thing for this team. That was the biggest game changer, and that was the biggest difference against SMU. And that could be the difference against Boise State. How do you confuse Maddox Madsen? How do you create different looks that he's not ready for, that he hasn't seen? Because everybody knows that Penn State's going to try to slow down Ashton Jeanty. It's just a matter of, can you also do certain things to confuse Madsen, get the ball back to your offense, and be physical. Drew Aller obviously played a huge role. We talked about his stat line. Obviously not the most impressive stat line, but again, you didn't really need him to. So you take that with a grain of salt, but also you kind of seen as the year progressed, Drew Aller, if Penn State wants to win a national championship, Drew Aller has to be more of a factor in this offense. So maybe, yes, it's a good idea to just get him to be a game manager, but he still has to be more involved. He still has to be more of a factor. And yes, you may not need it in this game, but you're going to need it in the long run. And if you're going to beat some of these good teams, Boise State is one of them. There might be a possibility where Boise State is hitting Penn State in the mouth and you need Drew Aller to make plays. So I'm not saying that Drew Aller is just out for this round. You need him to be dialed in and making some really nice throws. You have lots of options and you have lots of weapons in this offense, but Drew Aller has to be a factor long term. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton did a really good job of steadying the offense. Combined for 160 yards, both averaged 6.4 yards per carry, combined for 3 touchdowns. Again, that's going to be their bread and butter. Getting the ball down the field, on the ground, that's going to be something that helps them a ton. And again, when we're looking at what Penn State likes to do, again, it's not really a secret. This is a team that very much wants to run the football. And if Drew Aller is involved, that's even better. The defense, though, is really what's really exciting. We talked about Dominic DeLuca. Abdul Carter, I think, was having a field day with SMU's tackles. He's very physical. Danny Dennis Sutton was having a good day as well. That front seven was doing a lot of damage to what SMU wanted to do, and it took away a lot of the confidence in the Mustangs. They took the wind out of their sails really early, and that's something that they're looking to do against Boise State, because if not, this Boise State team can get going, and they are a very fun team to watch when they're playing with a ton of confidence. And we'll look at the players to watch for those Boise State Broncos. This is who Penn State needs to pay attention to. And really, you could say it's one guy, and I wouldn't argue with you because that's how good Ashton Jeanty is. And I think that even Penn State fans have to agree that Ashton Jeanty is really fun to watch, and the reason why you focus on him is because how good he is. He is such a good player that if you are not careful, he is going to torch you. Averaging 7.3 yards per carry. We talked about over 2,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, and the biggest thing is, like I said, we talked about how similar these two teams are, but I think that there's a difference. There's maybe a lack of depth in terms of talent for Boise State that Penn State could expose. If Ashton Jeanty is trying so hard to get 3 or 4 yards and gets tired, who do they have behind him? There's not a Nicholas Singleton to Katron Allen or vice versa in Boise State's offense that can produce at the level of Ashton Jeanty. That is a big question. Also, Ashton Jeanty's health. We've seen at times that he has struggled staying healthy for certain games, and as a precaution, they take him out. So what happens if Ashton Jeanty gets hurt? That's something that Penn State could capitalize on for sure. The other player to watch, Maddox Madsen. We've talked about him for a while now. It's been the biggest X factor for Boise State's team. 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He does a very good job of taking care of the football. He may not be, again, kind of similar to Drew Aller, he may not be that star player for this offense, but he is someone who is definitely capable of being an X factor and being a really fun player for this team. And if you're able to confuse him as Penn State, then you're going to be in good hands. Cam Camper is a player to watch on the outside. Again, I think that we saw some things from SMU that Penn State is definitely going to work on for this week and for the future. Certain players that could be problematic, Cam Camper is one of them. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball. Boise State's team, like we talked about before, very similar to Penn State. Everything starts up front. That front seven is absolutely phenomenal. Ahmad Hassanein is one of the best defensive tackles in college football. Jaden Virgin having a big year. You also look at Seyi Oladipo. He is a guy who's going to play up near the line of scrimmage. He's also going to play deep. So you have a similar skill set at Boise State. Again, what I'll go back to is that Penn State has the formula within their own roster on how to beat Boise State. They're very similar to what Boise State wants to do. They have a lot of similar players in terms of skill set, and that's what's going to help them a ton. So stopping Boise State is going to be, I'm not going to say it's easy because teams have really tried that and it hasn't worked when you're facing Boise State. But if Penn State wants to win this game, they know exactly the formula they need. All of these different shifts could be a challenge that they bring to Boise State. And from there, it's up to their team to get off to a fast start, find a way to create turnovers, and stop one of the best players in college football. If they do that, they're on to the next round.